The air on Akara Secundus was thick, not with smoke, but with sin. It was a tangible thing, a greasy psychic film that coated every surface, making the very act of breathing an admission of corruption. Brother Sergeant Lyros of the glorious 9th Legion, the Blood Angels, felt it clinging to his magnificent crimson plate like a burial shroud. He was a hero, a veteran of 100 campaigns, his name etched on the rolls of honor back on Baal. He was the bulwark. He was the fury of Sanguinius, made manifest a radiant beacon of hope against the gibbering tide that flooded the plaza. For the Emperor and the Great Angel, his voice was a resonant roar over the Vox, a pillar of courage for the mortal regiments of the Astra Militarum cowering behind the plasteel barricades, their faith shattering like glass. His chainsword angel's tear sang its hymn of destruction as it bit deep into the flesh of the possessed populace. They came in endless screaming waves, their bodies twisted into impossible, agonizing parodies of humanity, their mouths screaming blasphemies that logic could not pass, words that felt like broken glass shards scraping against the inside of the mind. But logic had fled this world weeks ago. Lyros felt the first whisper not in his ears, but on his skin. A crawling sensation, a tingling that was almost pleasant, like a lover's light touch, or the skittering chitinous legs of an unseen insect. Such passion it hissed, a silken, androgynous voice that seemed to bypass his helmet's audio filters and speak directly to the core of his being. Such beautiful, wasted rage. You fight with such artistry, a dance of death, but you hold back. You deny yourself the true ecstasy of the moment. Why be a tool when you could be a god? Lyros gritted his teeth, the motion automatic, a lifetime of training asserting itself. Begone foulness, I am his shield, I am his wrath. He activated his jump pack and soared a red comet of righteous fury into the thickest part of the melee. He landed with a bone-jarring shockwave, crushing 3 howling cultists beneath his armored boots. He was magnificent. He was war incarnate. He was the angel's son. "It's not rage," another voice growled, this one deeper, harsher smelling of smelted brass and scorched blood. It vibrated in his very bones. "It is weakness. You call this fury, this controlled, precise ballet. You hold a storm in your heart, son of Sanguinius, yet you leash it like a pet whimpering at your heel. It begs for release. Unleash it. Let the blood flow. Let it paint this drab grey world in the color of your legion. Khorne cares not from whence it flows, only that it flows," Lyros screamed. He felt it, the black rage, the ancient screaming curse of his lineage clawing at the reinforced edges of his consciousness, seeking to overwhelm him. He fought it as he had been trained 1,000 times. He focused on the beatific image of the Emperor. He recited the litanies of hate, his voice cracking. But the whispers were not from without. They were within. They were twisting the very genetic memory of his Primarch. Slaanesh offered sensation. Khorne offered release. And they were loud. They were drowning out his prayers. He saw a fellow Astartes, a brother from the Imperial Fists, holding a narrow alleyway. His bolter a steady, defiant drumbeat. A massive, mutated brute, its arms ending in screaming, piston-driven hammers of rebar swung, catching the Imperial Fist in the side, rupturing his power pack. The Son of Dawn fell, his yellow armor stained with his own blood. Lyros moved to defend him, his instincts screaming for him to protect his brother in arms. But he hesitated, for just one fatal second. A new thought, alien and intrusive, slithered into his mind. How beautiful the arterial red looks on the stark, boring yellow. A perfect contrast. Such a striking canvas. It's pleasing. It is art. He looked at his own gauntlets. The crimson seemed dull, caked with drying gore. It needed to be fresher, brighter. He looked at the wounded Imperial fist who was trying to rise, his one good hand extending his vox, crackling. "Brother, help me. For Dawn's sake." Lyros raised Angel's Tear. The Chainsword roared to full screaming power. "Brother!" The Imperial fist's eyes, visible through the cracked, blood-flecked lens of his helmet, widened in utter, soul-shattering betrayal. Blood Lyros roared, but the voice that ripped from his vox grill was not his. It was not the noble cry of a son of Baal. It was a brass-throated, ecstatic bellow of pure, undiluted madness. His armor, once a work of art from the forges of Baal, began to warp. The angelic wings on his jump pack cracked, the sculpt-work feathers becoming leathery, veined bat-like. The proud, winged symbol of the blood angels on his pauldron wept tears of black, viscous oil. The hero of Akara Secundus was gone, consumed not by a physical blow, but by a single perfectly placed whisper that had found the inherent tragic flaw in his very blood. The line broke. The guardsmen were consumed in a tide of gore. If the very sons of the angel, the demigods of the Imperium, could be so easily, so utterly unmade, what hope could there possibly be for the fragile soul of mankind? The incursion had not been an invasion. It was a plague of the soul, a mimetic contagion that had spread through the system. It had begun 3 months prior, with a single anomalous signal from a forgotten astropathic choir on the system's edge. A message that was not a message, a pattern in the static, a rhythm that felt familiar like a forgotten sin. Those who heard it changed. They became sullen or obsessive or violent. Then the dreams started. Dreams of black glass oceans, of brass cities that screamed of gardens of impossible, agonizing sensation. Now the capital city of Hive Primus was a monument to that plague. The very stones of the grand cathedral were weeping pus. The sky was a bruised, tearing purple, and the rain that fell was not water, but viscous, salty tears that stung the skin and left psychic stains. To breathe the air was to inhale despair. To look at the impossible non-Euclidean geometry that now twisted the Gothic architecture was to invite madness. The eyes would see a corner, but the mind would register an endless spiraling void. This was the true face of the great enemy. It did not need to land armies, though it had them screaming, gibbering things that tore their way into reality from the suppurating wounds in the sky. Its primary weapon was reality itself. It unmade truth. It unmade faith. A commissar famed for his iron will, a man who had executed 12 of his own for cowardice just that morning, stood on a high balcony, his bolt pistol in his hand. He was supposed to be organizing a new defensive line. Instead, he was weeping, rocking back and forth, whispering the name of a demon of Nurgle, begging it for release from the beautiful, terrible, endless cycle of decay he now saw in all things. A squad of elite Khazrakin, the pride of their regiment, had turned their hot-shot lasguns on each other, arguing over the precise shade of blue in the tearing sky, a philosophical debate that had escalated to ecstatic, murderous violence in under 30 seconds. The contamination was absolute. It was a psychic miasma that sought out the smallest crack in a mortal mind, a flicker of pride, a moment of fear, a hidden desire, a forgotten shame, and tore it wide open, hollowing out the soul to make room for itself. The very planet was dying not from orbital bombardment, but from a terminal sickness of the spirit. When the line had broken, when the last sane defenders were being overwhelmed, when the fallen Lyros stood triumphant on a pile of his former comrades, his new leathery wings spread wide, they arrived. There was no orchestral swell of orbital bombardment, no warning vox, no screaming drop pods carving fiery trails through the purple sky bearing banners of salvation. One moment the central plaza was a vortex of demonic energy, a howling symphony of chaos triumphant. The next there was silence. A pocket of absolute, sterile, cold nothing. They teleported in a single squad of 10, their tactical dreadnought armor, not the crimson of angels or the yellow of fortifications, but a stark, unadorned, functional silver. They wore no banners, they bore no chapter markings save one a sword and a book etched upon their left pauldron. The air around them shimmered. The psychic filth of the incursion could not touch them. It fled from their presence. It was as if they were a vacuum, a void in the spiritual world. The demons, moments before reveling in their slaughter, recoiled as if struck. The lesser ones, the gibbering horrors born of the populace's fear, actually dissolved their borrowed substance, unable to exist in such close proximity to this purity. This was not the passionate purity of zealous faith. This was the cold, terrifying purity of an operating theater of sterilized steel. A great multi-limbed creature of Slaanesh, which had been dancing through the gunfire, its laughter causing men to claw out their own eyes, paused. It hissed, its beautiful, hideous face contorting. "No, not you. You have no taste. You are empty." The Grey Knights advanced. They did not run. They walked a measured, relentless pace, their heavy footfalls a death knell on the stained marble. Their nemesis force halberds activated not with the hum of a power sword, but with a low, resonant thrum of psychic energy. It was a cold, silver-blue fire that burned without heat. "We are the hammer," their voices spoke in perfect, chilling unison, a monotone chorus that was more terrifying than any war cry. "We are the will of the Emperor. We are the blade that cuts the cancer. We are the Grey Knights, and we are your end." The demon prince, born from the combined psychic residue of the planet's fall, a thing of shadow and madness, roared its challenge. It gathered the ambient corruption and cast a bolt of pure, unadulterated warp energy, a spell that had melted the adamantium armor of a Lehman Russ tank earlier. The Grey Knight Justicar did not dodge. He did not brace. He simply raised his gauntleted hand. An invisible barrier, the collective psychic shield of the Aegis, flared into existence. The spell did not shatter against it. It unraveled. Its unholy energy dissipated, its complex demonic code simply ceasing to be like a word spoken into a hurricane. The knights opened fire. Their wrist-mounted stormbolters spat death. They were not just firing explosive shells. They were firing psycho-reactive rounds, each one inscribed with microscopic prayers of banishment blessed in sanctified oil. They tore through the demonic lesser beings, not just shredding their physical forms, but attacking their very spiritual essence, causing them to explode in showers of clean silver light. The Justicar charged the prince. He moved with an economy of motion that was brutally efficient. He was not a warrior. He was a function. He was the cure. They fought demon and knight filth and purity, the chaotic storm versus the cold void. The Grey Knights fought without passion, without anger, without fear. They were untouched. They were untainted. They were unbroken. As the Justicar finally plunged his force halberd deep into the demon prince's breast, banishing it with a psychic scream that tore the sky back to its normal color, the surviving Imperial guardsmen stared in awe and terror. These silver giants had walked through hell itself, breathed the air of madness, and were not even scorched. The battle was over. The silence that returned was heavy, broken only by the whimpers of the wounded. A guardsman, his face streaked with tears and grime, stumbled towards them, his lasgun held limply. "Thank the Emperor. Thank you. Who are you?" The Grey Knight turned his blue lenses, seeming to pierce the man's very soul. His presence was overwhelming, not with glory, but with an icy, immense purpose. The question, the real, unspoken question, echoed in the silence of the ravaged plaza. What impossible fortress of the soul had the Emperor built? What manner of men were these, forged from what divine steel? What inhuman sacrifice that even the gods of chaos themselves could not find, purchase could not whisper, could not break? The answer did not lie in the present, but in the deepest, most shadowed past, in the dying days of mankind's greatest hope. The galaxy was burning. The Horus heresy, a betrayal so profound it had torn a bleeding wound in the fabric of reality itself, was at its zenith. Terra, the cradle of humanity, was besieged. The dream of the Imperium was collapsing into a nightmare of fratricidal slaughter. While the Primarchs, those demigod sons of the Emperor, waged their very public, very glorious and very terrible war across the stars, a second more secret war was being conceived in the shadows of the Imperial Palace. Malcador the Sigillite, First Lord of Terra, the Emperor's most trusted confidant, and a psyker of almost unimaginable power, sat in a chamber that did not officially exist. It was buried deep beneath the foundations of the palace, shielded by wards so potent they would have scoured the mind of a lesser man just by proximity. The air was cold still and heavy with the weight of futures seen and futures lost. Before him stood 12 figures. They were not generals. They were not politicians. They were survivors. They were loyalists. 4 were Astartes, chosen not for their glory but for their resilience. One was Janus, a warrior of the 1,000 Suns, who had seen the corruption of his legion and turned away his soul scarred but intact. Another was a Raven Guard, his face a mask of silent grief, having seen his brothers butchered at Istvan V. A World-Eater shackled and trembling, fighting the butcher's nails in his own skull, but whose loyalty to the Emperor had miraculously held fast. An Ultramarine, a paragon of stability representing the theoretical future. But there were others. 8 mortals agents of Malcador's secret sigil men and women who had fought the Whispers and the Shadows long before the first bolt gun was fired in the heresy. They were investigators, mystics, code breakers, and assassins. They were the Proto-Inquisition. What you have seen, Malcador's voice was a dry rasp, the sound of ancient parchment and dust. Yet it filled the chamber with undeniable authority is only the beginning. My master the Emperor wages a war for the future of mankind. He fights his favored son Horus on the battlefields of loyalty and ambition. But that is the material war. He gestured, and the very air in the chamber seemed to part, revealing a window into the Imperium. It was not the roiling, colorful storm the navigators saw. It was a hell. It was a churning, conscious ocean of pure malice, a realm of sentient rage, limitless lust, and gnawing despair. This, Malcador said, his voice heavy with a terrible, intimate knowledge, is the real war. The great enemy, the ruinous powers. They are not aliens. They are not conquerors. They are us. They are our echoes, our sins, our passions given form and hunger. Horus has not merely betrayed the Emperor. He has opened the door, and the wolves of the warp are at the throat of humanity. He turned his gaze ancient and impossibly weary upon the Astartes. You, his sons, are magnificent. You are the greatest weapons he ever conceived, and you are his greatest failure. Your gene seed drawn from the Primarchs makes you demigods, but it also gives you their flaws, their pride, their rage, their ambition, their capacity for feeling. And in this new war, to feel is to be vulnerable. To be passionate is to offer a handhold to the abyss. The fall of Horus, of Fulgrim of Angron, it proves that no Astartes, no matter how noble or strong, is truly immune. The flaw is inherent in the design. Malcador rose, his simple robes seeming to cast shadows as deep as a starless void. We need a new weapon, a final failsafe. A chapter of warriors built not from the template of a Primarch, but from the Emperor himself. A brotherhood unbound by the flaws of their uncles. We need warriors whose very souls are anathema to the beast. We need knights. He spoke then of Titan, the largest moon of Saturn. While the war raged, unseen, unrecorded, Malcador had been building. Using resources hidden even from the Primarchs, he had constructed the greatest fortress monastery the galaxy would never know. It was moved through colossal secret expenditure of psychic and technological power into a pocket of the warp, shielded by the Sigillite's own wards, hidden from all eyes, demonic or mortal. It will be your sanctum, your forge, your prison, he told them. You will not be a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. You will be something else. You will answer to no one save the Emperor, and in his absence to those who will carry on this secret war. The mortals in the room, the 8 Proto-Inquisitors stepped forward. This was the pact. This was the moment of creation. The Astartes would provide the genetic template and the combat doctrine. The mortals would provide the purpose, the law, the unwavering cold function. They would not be conquerors. They would not raise banners over worlds. They would not be celebrated. They would be the secret surgeons of the Imperium. They would be the militant arm of an organization that did not yet have a name, but which would become the Ordo Malleus. Their sole, terrible, and eternal purpose would be to hunt the daemon, to study the archenemy, and to cleanse its taint wherever it was found. They would be the line not drawn in the sand but in the soul of mankind itself. The Grey Knights would not fight for territory or glory or even for honor. They would fight for the simple, brutal, binary concept of purity. And they would pay any price to maintain it, both in themselves and in the Imperium they were sworn to secretly protect. The foundation of this new order could not be built on the flawed genius of the Primarchs. Malcador knew this. The Emperor in his grief and terrible foresight knew this. The Astartes were reflections of their sires, and those sires, for all their glory, were flawed, passionate human beings scaled to godhood. Their genetic codes were tapestries woven with brilliance, but also with the threads of pride, melancholy rage, and perfectionism. These were the very threads the great enemy had pulled upon to unravel the Imperium. A new warrior would require a new source. The gene seed of the Grey Knights is the single most guarded secret in the Imperium, a truth so potent that to merely know it would warrant execution by the Ordo Malleus itself. It was not harvested from a lost Primarch. It was not a chimeric blend of the most stable bloodlines. It was a direct, terrifying, and sacred gift from the master of mankind. In the deepest vaults of the Imperial Palace, in laboratories that predated the Unity of Terra, the Emperor had kept a final, untouched reserve of his own genetic material. It was the pure, unadulterated template of his own being, the raw code of the anathema, the very essence that made the demons recoil, and the Chaos Gods themselves view him with such personal, vitriolic hatred. This was the gift he bestowed upon Malcador's nascent project. The gene seed of the Grey Knights is the Emperor's blood distilled and refined into a stable, implantable sequence. It is in the most literal sense a sliver of the Emperor's own soul imprinted upon the flesh. This divine origin is the first and most formidable wall of their defense. Where other Astartes inherit the echoes of their Primarch's persona, the artistic fury of the Blood Angels, the stoic pride of the Imperial Fists, the savage nobility of the Space Wolves, the Grey Knights inherit nothing. Their gene seed is a void. It is a blank slate of pure, cold, functional purpose. It does not gift them with superhuman rage or profound melancholy. It gifts them with stability. It is a psychic anchor in the storm of the Imperium. The effect is profound. When a whisper from the warp finds a flaw in a normal Astartes, it finds purchase. It finds a crack of pride to widen a seed of resentment, to nurture a spark of anger, to fan into a conflagration. When that same whisper probes the mind of a Grey Knight, it finds nothing. It finds a smooth, sheer, cold surface. It finds no handhold, no resonance, no sympathetic vibration. The gene seed does not just build a superhuman body. It builds a soul that is inherently inimical to corruption. It is the genetic manifestation of the Emperor's absolute, uncompromising will. It is anathema in the blood, a biological rejection of the demonic. The very presence of a Grey Knight is painful to a creature of the warp, like a discordant, screaming note that disrupts their unholy harmony. Their blood is poison. Their flesh is torment. But this gift comes at a cost. The Emperor's gene seed is impossibly demanding. It is not a gentle augmentation. It is a brutal, overwhelming transformation. It does not tolerate weakness. It does not compromise. It demands a vessel of singular, impossible strength, not just of body but of spirit. And it is for this reason that the Grey Knight's recruitment process is the single most brutal and unforgiving in the entire Imperium, a system that makes the trials of Fenris or Baal seem like child's play. They do not recruit from death worlds or hive gangs. They do not seek the strongest, the fastest, or the most aggressive. The Lords of Titan seek one thing and one thing only: nascent psychic potential. They scour the Imperium in their unmarked black ships, their librarians sifting through the endless tide of souls, looking for the sparks, the young minds just beginning to open to the Empyrean. They are taken young, often mere children, torn from their worlds without a word of explanation. These are the most sensitive, the most vulnerable, the most dangerous of humanity's children, the very souls who would, if left unchecked, almost certainly become the prey of demonic possession, the unwitting gateways for an incursion. They are brought to Titan to the cold, silent halls of the fortress monastery. And there the trials begin. They are not trials of strength, they are trials of will. The aspirants are subjected to the implantation of the Emperor's gene seed, a process that kills 99.9% of them. The gene seed does not just integrate, it invades. It attacks the aspirant's body and soul, seeking to overwrite them. Most are simply annihilated. Their bodies dissolve, their minds shatter, their souls are snuffed out like a candle in a gale. Only those with a core of psychic and spiritual will so dense, so unbending, that it can withstand the divine onslaught survive. Those few who live are then broken. They are rebuilt not as men but as weapons. The gene seed provides the innate biological defense, the genetic unbreakability. But this is not enough. A wall can still be shattered by a great enough force. The aspirants must now be taught to fight on the battlefield of the soul. The gene seed makes them resistant. The training will make them immune. They must become more than just a fortress. They must become a fortress that hunts. They must be forged in a crucible of spiritual torment, taught to wield their own pure souls as the ultimate weapon against the dark. They must learn the 666 wards of protection. To survive the implantation of the Emperor's gene seed is to be born anew, but it is a birth into a world of endless, agonizing trial. The handful of aspirants who endure find themselves in the echoing, sterile chambers of the Sanctum Sanctorum, their bodies swelling with transhuman muscle, their minds raw, open, and supercharged with psychic potential. They are not yet Grey Knights. They are merely vessels purified and empty. Now they must be filled. They must be forged. Their training begins not in a sparring cage, but in a place known only as the Chamber of Mirrors. There are no mirrors of glass or silver, only the reflections of the soul. Here the aspirants sit chained to cold iron chairs, their minds linked to arcane psycho-simulators. And the chaplains, their armor the color of polished obsidian, their helmet lenses like judgmental red stars, begin the torture. Phantasms born of carefully curated warp lore are unleashed upon their minds. The aspirants are forced to watch their homeworlds burn 1,000 times over, to hear the dying screams of their forgotten families twisted into praises for the ruinous powers. They are forced to live entire lifetimes of failure in the span of a single second. Whispers identical to those that broke Sergeant Lyros are directed at them, but amplified, personalized, crafted from the aspirant's own latent fears. You are weak. You are a failure. You are not strong enough to save them. But we can give you that strength. Join us, and you will never be weak again. They are offered empires. They are offered forbidden knowledge. They are shown visions of a peaceful galaxy, a galaxy they could rule if only they would bend their knee. They are subjected to sensations of pleasure, so acute they border on agonizing, and pain so profound it threatens to unravel their sanity. They are forced to confront every iota of pride, every flicker of ambition, every shadow of doubt within themselves. The chaplains observe their scalpels of judgment poised. The slightest hesitation, the barest flicker of interest in a demonic offer the smallest crack in the wall of their will, and the trial is ended. A bolt pistol is pressed to the aspirant's temple, and the Emperor's peace is granted. There is no room for a single microscopic seed of corruption. This is not simple torment, it is calibration. The aspirants are taught to identify the precise frequency of a demonic lie. They learn to differentiate the texture of a cornete whisper from a Tzeentchian paradox. They are taught to recognize the psychic scent of Slaanesh, the emotional weight of Nurgle. Their minds are honed into diagnostic tools capable of dissecting a spiritual plague, as a surgeon dissects a diseased organ. Parallel to this torment is their true education, the mastery of the 66 wards of protection. This is the centerpiece of their spiritual armor. These are not prayers, not in the way a simple Imperial guardsman prays. A guardsman's prayer is a desperate plea, a shout of faith into the void hoping for an answer. The wards are the answer. They are complex, multi-layered psychic formula, cognitive and spiritual firewalls that are meticulously, painfully, and permanently engraved upon the aspirant's very consciousness. Each ward is a different defense. The first ward is a simple barrier of self-knowledge, the I know who I am, that is the foundation of all resistance. The 112th ward is a complex mnemonic sequence that starves a Tzeentchian mimetic virus of the logic it needs to replicate. The 349th ward is an emotional counter-frequency, a cold spot of pure, disciplined apathy that can be psychically projected to neutralize the ecstatic energies of a Slaaneshi aura. The 571st ward is a metaphysical concept of denial, an assertion of imperial truth so absolute that it can for a moment reject a demonic incursion's effect on reality. The aspirants spend decades in meditative states reciting these wards, not with their mouths, but with their souls. They must learn to hold all 666 wards in their active conscious mind, simultaneously a feat of mental discipline that would liquefy the brain of a normal human. These wards become their subconscious. They are the operating system of the Grey Knight's mind. When a demon whispers, it is not the knight who consciously rejects it. It is the 44th ward which automatically identifies and neutralizes the specific psychic frequency of the lie before it ever reaches the knight's awareness. Their minds are no longer human, flexible, or curious. They are hardened, singular, and impenetrable. After decades of this relentless forging, when an aspirant's mind is a fortress of overlapping, self-repairing psychic shields, they face the final test, the ritual of banishment. The aspirant, now a giant in nascent power armor, stands in the center of a vast, obsidian-floored chamber. He is armed with nothing but his will and the knowledge he has learned. Before him, held in check by the combined power of a conclave of librarians, is the enemy. Not a simulation, not a phantasm. A true, screaming, furious demon torn from the warp and given physical form against its will. It is often a bloodletter of Khorne, a creature of pure, incandescent rage, or a plague-bearer, its presence a vortex of spiritual and physical decay. The librarians release their hold just enough for the creature to focus its malice on the aspirant. The air grows thick. The aspirant's armor groans as the creature's aura of decay tries to rot the very ceramite. Whispers of bloody slaughter fill his mind, promising him glory in the gore, begging him to release the rage he has been taught to suppress. The aspirant does not move. He does not scream. He does not charge. He becomes the eye of the storm. He mentally anchors himself, his gene seed providing the stable ground, his wards activating one by one a series of invisible shields slamming into place. He begins the banishment. He speaks the creature's vulnerabilities, not its true name. He is not yet worthy of that, but the conceptual weaknesses of its god. He projects his will not as a blast of power, but as a focused, cold, precise command. He does not ask the demon to leave. He does not pray for it to be smitten. He tells it that it has no place here, that its presence is a logical and spiritual impossibility in the face of the Emperor's truth. The demon roars, lashing out with spectral claws that pass harmlessly through the aspirant's layered psychic defenses. It screams threats, it makes promises. The aspirant continues, his voice a monotone, his will a spike of ice-cold, righteous certainty. He is not a warrior fighting a monster, he is a surgeon excising a tumor. He is an exterminator cleansing a vermin. The demon begins to dissolve its physical form, flickering its connection to the material world, severed by the absolute, unwavering denial of the aspirant's soul. With a final echoing scream of hatred, the creature is hurled back into the Imperium. The aspirant stands, breathing heavily, his body slick with sweat, his mind exhausted but unbroken. The librarians and chaplains lower their hoods, their faces impassive. There is no praise, there is no congratulation, there is only the cold, hard finality of function. The test is complete, the weapon is forged. Only now, after surviving the gene seed, the torment of the mirrors, and the face-to-face confrontation with the archenemy, is the aspirant deemed worthy. He has earned the right to paint his armor silver. He has earned the right to be called a Grey Knight. A Grey Knight is not merely a warrior. He is a complete psychic weapon system, and every component of his war gear is an extension of that system. Nothing exemplifies this more clearly than the Terminator and Aegis power armor he wears. To a normal Space Marine armor is a physical fortress, a shell of ceramite and adamantium to ward off bullet and blade. To a Grey Knight, his armor is a cathedral. It is a reliquary for the soul and a projector for the will. It is forged not in the clamorous industrial furnaces of Mars, but in the quiet, cold cathedral forges deep beneath Titan's surface. The artificer priests of the Grey Knights are themselves ascetics. As they hammer the plates, they are not just shaping metal. They are impressing prayers into its very atomic structure. Every suit of Aegis armor, be it the hulking Terminator variant, or the more mobile power armor, is crafted with layers of refined ceramite steel and then electroplated with consecrated silver purified in secret rituals. This silver is not decorative. It is a psychic conductor. Viewed under microscopic augmentation, the entire surface of the armor is covered in millions of micro-runes. Each rune is a fragment of the 666 wards of protection, etched with quantum-level precision lasers. The armor, therefore, is not just a shell. It is a steel-bound codex. It is a physical manifestation of the wearer's faith and discipline. When the Grey Knight projects his will, this silver skin and its runic scripture catch that energy, refine it, amplify it, and broadcast it into the immediate environment. This is the Aegis. It is not a physical force field that one can switch on or off. It is a collective psychic effect generated by the iron will of the Grey Knights and amplified infinitely by their runic armor. As a squad of Grey Knights draws together, their individual Aegis fields interlock, linking and harmonizing. They create a bubble of imperial truth and order within the roiling chaos of the warp. To the entities of the Imperium, the presence of the Aegis field is torture. It is a psychic null zone. Demons who perceive the real world in terms of emotion, soul stuff, and rents in reality look upon a squad of Grey Knights and see nothing. They are a void, a silence, a cold lacuna in the symphony of corruption. The Aegis field obfuscates their presence to unholy senses, hiding them from the archenemy's gaze until it is too late. And when the battle is joined, the Aegis acts as a shield. It is a wall of psychic negation. On the shrine world of Xylos, a lord of change, a potent demon prince of Tzeentch, stood at the center of a summoning circle, chanting the 9 verses of Flux. He was transmuting 1,000 cultists into a living flesh-and-bone warp portal. As the Grey Knight squad teleported directly into the cathedral's nave, the demon hissed, not in fear, but in annoyance at the interruption. It saw the silver forms and scoffed at their simplicity. "Your ignorance is so linear," it shrieked, its voice 1,000 contradictory statements. "Taste the complexity of fate." It raised its staff and unleashed a torrent of iridescent purple and blue warp fire. This was not a flame. It was a transmutative spell, a curse designed to rewrite the target's reality, to turn ceramite to waterbone to glass, and will to madness. The bolt of sorcery struck the lead Justicar square in the chest. There was no explosion, no shriek of tearing metal. The magic unraveled. As the warp energy hit the Aegis field, it was like a complex river flowing into an arid desert. The intricate, multidimensional structure of the spell, which relied on flux, uncertainty, and falsehood to exist, had just slammed into a wall of absolute certainty. The runes on the Justica's armor flared with a cold silver light, and the Tzeentchian sorcery was simply decoded and nullified. It slid off the armor like water from polished steel, dissipating into harmless, inert sparks. The demon took a step back, its avian head cocking in genuine confusion. It could not comprehend. Its magic had not been blocked. It had been denied. The Justicar had not even flinched. He simply continued his advance, his nemesis halberd igniting, because to him the demon's magic was not a threat. It was merely a lie, and his armor was the truth. The armor provides the defense, but a Grey Knight is a weapon, and a weapon must have a point. In his hands he carries the most iconic and specialized tool of his order, the Nemesis Force weapon. To the uninitiated it appears as a master-crafted blade, halberd or falchion, larger and heavier than its Astartes pattern counterparts forged of the same consecrated silver as their armor. But its deadliness lies not in its edge. An unpowered Nemesis blade, while a formidable piece of steel, is no sharper than a standard combat knife. Its true nature is far more complex. At the core of every Nemesis weapon, running through its haft and embedded within the very heart of the blade itself, is not a power field generator. It is a psycho-spiritual matrix of unparalleled complexity. It is a crystalline lattice, a nexus of braided silver core wiring, and psycho-reactive crystal shards, all dormant, all cold to the touch. The weapon is not a battery of energy. It is a conduit. It is an empty vessel waiting to be filled, a perfectly tuned instrument waiting for a master's touch. It is a psychic amplifier designed not to draw power from an external source, but to focus the internal power of its wielder. A Grey Knight does not simply activate his weapon. He forms a communion with it. He extends his consciousness, his disciplined, cold, and utterly pure will from his mind down the length of his arm and pours a fraction of his own soul stuff into the weapon's matrix. The physical gauntlet of his Aegis armor pressed against the weapon's grip acts as the final contact point, sealing the spiritual circuit. The effect is instantaneous. The matrix at the weapon's core ignites not with heat, but with a thrumming, resonant energy. A nimbus of coruscating silver-blue fire envelops the blade. This is not the crackling, molecular-disrupting field of a common power sword. It is something else entirely. It is the Grey Knight's own spirit, his anathema nature, his absolute rejection of the demonic taken from his mind and given a razor's edge. The physical steel of the halberd is now merely a guide, a physical anchor for a blade made of pure, weaponized, and righteous soul. The air around the blade does not burn. It grows cold, and it vibrates with a low choral note of absolute denial. This is what makes the Nemesis weapon the perfect tool for their trade. When a Grey Knight swings his halberd, he is not attempting to cut flesh. He is striking at a far more fundamental target. A fiend of Slanesh, a blur of pink and purple muscle, its form shifting and indistinct, danced around the Justica's strikes, its claws leaving trails of narcotic musk in the air. The creature was only partially corporeal, its essence more emotion than matter. A bolt shell would pass through it harmlessly. A chainsword would find no purchase, its teeth screaming against a substance that was not truly there. The Justicar did not try to predict the creature's dance. He stood his ground, a silver anchor in the storm of sensation, and swung his halberd in a precise, economical arc. The demon, in its arrogance, tried to phase through the attack. The physical blade of the halberd did indeed pass through the creature's shoulder with almost no resistance, but the field did not. The moment the silver-blue aura of the knight's will touched the demon's immaterial form, the creature shrieked. It was a sound not of pain, but of unraveling. The nemesis field, a projection of the Emperor's own anti-warp nature, did not cut the creature's physical body. It severed the creature's very essence. It sliced through the unholy energy that bound the demon's consciousness to the material plane. Where the blade passed, a wound of clean silver fire burned. This was not a wound of blood and tissue which a demon could easily regenerate. It was a soul wound, a permanent scar on the creature's spiritual code. The silver fire was not burning. It was purifying, erasing the demonic data it touched. A creature killed by a bolter is merely inconvenienced, its physical form disrupted, and its essence banished back to the warp, free to coalesce and return angrier and wiser. But a demon struck down by a nemesis weapon is irrevocably damaged. Its very being, its true name in the Imperium, is scarred and diminished. The energy that constituted its arm, its shoulder, was not dispersed. It was annihilated. The fiend collapsed its graceful form, spasming its body, flaking away, not into gore, but into motes of silver-white ash. The wound would not heal. That part of the demon was gone forever. The Justicar had not just killed it. He had permanently erased a part of its soul. To possess psychic power in the 41st Millennium is to be cursed. It is to be a living gateway to the Imperium, a beacon of soul stuff that draws the predators of the warp as blood draws sharks. A standard Imperial Psyker, be they a sanctioned astropath or a warrior librarian of another Astartes chapter, lives a life of constant, terrifying vigilance. Their power is not their own. They are a conduit. They are a tap drilled into the wall of reality, and on the other side of that wall lies the Imperium, a churning, limitless and sentient ocean of pure chaos. When they draw upon their power, they are opening that tap, channeling the raw, untamed energy of the warp through their own minds and bodies, attempting to shape it before it consumes them. Every spell is a bargain. Every psychic blast is a risk, a careful dance on the precipice of damnation, inviting the very corruption they seek to fight. The Grey Knights are different. Theirs is not the power of the conduit. Theirs is the power of the furnace, the sanctic discipline. The unique branch of psychic art practiced only by the Sons of Titan is not based on channeling the warp. It is the absolute antithesis of it. Through the miracle of the Emperor's gene seed, the relentless mental forging, and the spiritual armor of the 666 swords, a Grey Knight's soul is not a fragile beacon. It is a self-contained, self-igniting star of pure, ordered, and cold energy. They do not draw power from the Imperium. They generate power from within their own souls. Their power is the focused, disciplined output of their own unshakable will, a righteous fire that burns with purity, not chaos. This fundamental difference is what makes them immune. A normal psyker in a moment of weakness can have their channel hijacked. The very power they are wielding can become the avenue of their own possession. A Grey Knight has no such channel. His mind is a sealed fortress. To try and possess a Grey Knight is like trying to pour gasoline onto a star. The corrupting force is simply annihilated by the sheer, overwhelming output of pure, sanctified energy. The manifestations of this power are therefore not subtle. They are not the complex, reality-bending illusions or mutations of a chaos sorcerer. They are direct, devastating, and absolute expressions of purity and denial. On the battlefield, a squad of Grey Knights faces a hulking, armored Chaos Marine, his plate warped and fused with his flesh, an icon of Khorne blazing on his pauldron. The Chaos Marine raises a massive demonic axe that drips spectral gore. He is the epitome of material and spiritual corruption. The lead Grey Knight, a Justicar, does not meet the axe with his own blade. He focuses his will. He ignites the furnace within. Hammerhand, he intones his voice a cold command. His gauntleted fist is suddenly encased in a shimmering silver-blue field of energy. It is not just his physical strength, already monstrous, that is amplified. It is the concept of his indomitable will, the sheer crushing weight of his certainty. He does not block the axe. He punches the Chaos Marine's breastplate. There is a sound like a cathedral bell being struck by a meteor. The ceramite, thick enough to stop a tank shell, does not just crack or bend. It disintegrates. The psychic force of the hammerhand does not recognize the material properties of the armor. It recognizes the demonic corruption infusing it and annihilates it. The blow strikes not just the body, but the hateful spirit within, shattering both with a single absolute impact. From a ridge above, a coven of cultists is chanting their words, tearing a small bleeding rift in the air, from which lesser demons, gibbering and formless, begin to spill. A Grey Knight librarian steps forward. He raises his hand not to cast a counterspell, but to cleanse. He unleashes the cleansing flame. What erupts from his palm is not fire. It is not pyromancy. It is purity weaponized. It is a torrent of silver-white cold light that washes over the ridge. The cultists do not burn. They are scoured. The flames do not char their flesh. They erase their spiritual filth, their very souls dissolving under the touch of the sanctic energy. The half-formed demons shriek as the light hits them, their borrowed matter dissolving, their unholy essence erased from existence. The tear, in reality starved of the corrupt energy that created it, stitches itself shut. The air is left clean cold and sterile. The greatest of the sanctic powers is the simplest. Banishment. It is the ultimate expression of the Grey Knight's purpose. A demon prince, a creature of nightmare given form, roars as it swats a land raider aside. It is an entity of the warp, a being of pure thought and malice bound to a physical shell. A Grey Knight paladin, his armor, ancient and inscribed with 1,000 battle honors, plants his feet. He does not charge. He does not raise his blade. He simply focuses his entire, concentrated, unwavering will on the creature. He is not casting a spell. He is not reciting an arcane ritual. He is issuing a command. He looks at the demon, this impossible creature of chaos, and with the full, absolute, and unyielding power of his emperor-forged soul, he denies its very right to exist in the material universe. Begone! His voice is a psychic shockwave of pure, unadulterated order. It is the antithesis of the demon's entire being. The demon prince freezes its roar, catching in its throat. Its physical form, a construct of lies and hate, begins to flicker, its outline blurring. The Grey Knight's will is a psychic hammer, smashing the nails that pin the demon's spirit to the physical world. With a final soul-tearing scream that is heard only in the minds of the sane, the demon prince is violently ejected from its host body, its essence hurled, shattered, and broken back into the hell from which it came. This is the sanctic discipline. It is not the borrowed chaotic and treacherous power of the warp. It is the self-generated righteous and devastating power of the pure soul. Faith is the shield of the Imperium. It is the battered, often blind, and desperate belief of 1 trillion souls, a collective shout in the dark that holds the monsters at bay. But the faith of a Grey Knight is not the faith of the Imperium. It is something else entirely. It is not a shield. It is a blade. Consider the breach at the Basilica of St. Asta. A horde of lesser giggling demons, plague-bearers of Nurgle, are spilling through a corrupted archway. Standing before them are two figures, the last line of defense. One is a sister of battle, a canoness of the Order of the Ebon Chalice. Her armor is black, her bolter roaring. Her face beneath a film of sweat and grime is a mask of ecstatic, furious zeal. For the Emperor, she screams, her voice cracking with passion. He is our shield and our protector. Abominate the unclean, suffer not the witch to live. Her faith is a fire. It is a passionate, defiant, external belief. She believes in spite of the horrors before her. She believes because she has been taught, and she has embraced that teaching with every fiber of her being. Her belief is so fervent that it borders on the supernatural. When a glob of demonic filth strikes her pauldron, it sizzles and dissolves, scoured away not by her armor, but by the aura of her sheer incandescent zeal. This is the faith of the Adepta Sororitas, a white-hot, righteous, and ultimately human passion. Beside her stands Brother Justicar Theron. He is also fighting, he is also faithful. But his faith is a different quality. It is not a fire, it is a glacier. He does not shout, he does not scream litanies. His face, were it visible behind his silver helm, would be a mask of cold, focused concentration. His faith is not belief, it is knowledge. It is certainty. The sister believes the Emperor will protect her. Theron knows that he is the instrument of that protection. The sister belies the daemon is an abomination. Theron knows the precise metaphysical laws that define the demon's existence, and he knows the exact spiritual formula to unmake it. He has no doubt. He has no passion. He has only the cold, hard, inescapable fact of his purpose. The faith of the Sororitas is a desperate prayer, a plea for divine intervention. The faith of the Grey Knight is a conscious, disciplined act of will. It is a psychic function. The demonic tide surges. The canoness shouts, "Emperor, grant me strength." It is a prayer, a hope, a call for aid. She is a subject pleading to her master. Theron, feeling the psychic pressure of the Nurgle spawn's aura, an almost tangible wave of despair, apathy, and decay, does not plead. He acts. He utters a single bivocal cant. His will be done. It is not a prayer, it is a command, it is a psychic recalibration. As he speaks the words, he is not asking for strength. He is accessing the strength that is his birthright. He is engaging a specific psychic protocol, a ward of protection that identifies the emotional frequency of despair and actively neutralizes it with a counterwave of cold, hard purpose. The runes on his Aegis armor glow not with holy light, but with the cold, functional hum of a machine engaging. The aura of decay hits him and stops shattering like glass against a wall of adamantium. His faith is a discipline, a spiritual technology, a conscious flexing of his soul muscle, a great unclean one. A greater demon of Nurgle hauls its grotesque, immense form through the ruined archway. It laughs a wet, choking sound that causes the very stones of the basilica to weep. It is the avatar of plague and despair. It turns its single rotting eye upon the sister of battle. It loves what it sees. Zealot, it gurgles its voice, a chorus of dying groans. Such passion, such wasted life. You fight decay, yet you live and breathe and feel you are already mine. Your passion will rot. Your hope will curdle. You are just a corpse that hasn't stopped screaming. The demon hates her, but it also desires her. It sees her as a prize to be corrupted, her fervent faith a delicacy to be soured. The canoness roars in defiance, but a flicker of doubt, a cold seed of fear has been planted. She is human. Then the demon's gaze shifts. It locks eyes with the impassive blue lenses of Brother Justicar Theron. The laughter stops. Instantly. The creature's jovial, rotting face contorts. It does not see a prize. It does not see passion or fear or hope or doubt. It sees a void. It sees a cold, sterile, silver-plated nothing. It sees a blank wall of absolute denial. Theron's soul is not a feast. It is poison. His presence is not a challenge. It is an error. It is a logical and spiritual impossibility that causes the demon physical pain. The great unclean one, which moments before was a boisterous god of rot, hisses, recoiling. Anathema. It whispers the single word choked with a fear that is alien to its very nature. You are empty. You are cold. The canoness has faith, and it is a shield. The Grey Knight is faith, and it is a sword. and the demon knows with chilling certainty which one it truly fears. There is an arsenal on Titan more powerful and more dangerous than all the Nemesis weapons, storm bolters, and strike cruisers in the Grey Knight's fleet. It is not kept in a vault of steel, but in a vault of silence, light, and overwhelming psychic protection. It is the Librarium of Titan, known to the Knights as the Sanctum Demonica. It is the most extensive and terrible collection of demonic lore, forbidden texts, and unholy artifacts in the Imperium, dwarfing even the secret Black Library of the Elder in its single-minded focus. Here, under a cold, analyzing light, knowledge of the archenemy is not burned. It is catalogued, dissected, and weaponized. The walls are lined not with paper scrolls, but with data slate psycho-inductive crystals and stasis-sealed tomes bound in the hides of forgotten creatures. Here lies the true history of the Horus Heresy, the 77 grimoires of Lorgar, the complete, unexpurgated text of the Necrotuque. But deepest within, in a chamber shielded by wards so potent they would annihilate the mind of any non-Grey Knight, is the Lexicon Cacodominus, the great registry of names. Not the names given to demons by mortals, but their true names, the secret conceptual formulae of their very essence, torn from their minds in the moment of their banishment, or painstakingly researched by warrior scholars over 10,000 years. To know a mortal's name is to have an address. To know a demon's true name is to have its leash, its key, and its executioner's blade all in one. It is the ultimate expression of control. On the corrupted forge world of Voth Magna, a Kroniki demon prince, a being of brass and molten fury, had just torn a Reaver-class Titan in half. It was a god of slaughter, and it knew it. It stood 20 meters tall, its axe dripping the Titan's reactor fluid, and it laughed a sound of grinding metal and bloody-throated triumph. It was invincible. It was the apex of the incursion. A single Grey Knight librarian, Codicia Kaelan, teleported onto the Titan's burning chassis, his silver armor a stark contrast to the blood-red demon. He was small, an insect before a god. The demon turned its arrogance palpable. A tiny silver fly, come to be... What did you say? The laughter choked. The arrogance vanished, replaced by an expression of pure, soul-freezing, abject terror. Kaelan had not shouted. He had simply spoken, his voice amplified by his helmet's vox, a single complex multisyllabic word that was not a word, but a discordant equation of sound and psychic intent. He had spoken the demon's true name. The effect was absolute. The demon prince was no longer a god. It was a thing. Its connection to the power of Khorne was severed, its borrowed might draining away. It was exposed naked and utterly completely under Kael next to last word's control. Neil Kaelan commanded, his voice the cold, flat monotone of an executioner. The 20-meter-tall god of slaughter knelt. Its massive brass and flesh body shuddered, its limbs moving against its own will, forced into submission by the power of the name. You are Gika Hil Brakhthank Kaelan, stated, walking calmly towards the paralyzed giant. You are a construct of rage. You are an echo of a failure. And you have no power here. Please. The demon's voice, once a roar, was now a pathetic, gurgling whisper. Anything. I will serve. You will not, Kaelan said, raising his nemesis force stave. You will unmake. He spoke a single final syllable of the name, the one that meant ending. The demon prince looked up, its eyes wide with the horror of its own imminent non-existence, and then it simply ceased. It did not explode. It did not vanish. It dissolved, its form collapsing into dust, its very essence deleted from the material and immaterial planes by the absolute authority of its wielder. But this power, this ultimate weapon, comes at the most terrible price. This is the double-edged sword of the Grey Knight's forbidden knowledge. To know a true name, a librarian cannot simply read it from a data slate. He must understand it. He must internalize it. He must, in effect, allow a piece of that demon's unholy code, its essential data to be installed in his own mind. The 666 wards are a fortress. The mind of a librarian is that fortress, but with a terrible, screaming prisoner locked in its deepest, most secure dungeon. Back in his meditation cell on Titan Codicea, Kalen is not at peace. He is at war. He sits unarmored, his eyes closed, his body rigid. He is sweating in the cryo-still air. Because the name is still in his head. It is no longer a tool he wielded. It is a virus he has contracted. It is whispering to him. Not from the warp, but from inside his own consciousness. Gikahilbrakthank. The name is alive. You were magnificent, it whispers its voice. Imagine that power at your command always. Why imprison me? I am part of you now. I can give you the names of others. I know the true name of the Lord of Change that plagues your Grand Master. I can make you a hero. I can make you a god. Kalen breathes. He does not fight the voice. He does not argue with it. He contains it. He reasserts his wards, his mental discipline, a cage of cold, hard iron built layer by layer around the poisonous knowledge. He is a jailer, and his own soul is the prison. Every librarian of Titan bears this burden. They have swallowed the most potent poison in the galaxy, and they must spend every second of every day of their unnaturally long lives consciously, actively, and relentlessly refusing to digest it. A single moment of weakness, a single flicker of pride, and the prisoner would be free. The fortress would fall not from an assault, but from a betrayal within. This is the burden of knowledge. It is the greatest power of the Grey Knights, and it is their most profound secret and constant torment. The 666 wards of protection are the fortress of the Grey Knight's mind. But there is a 666th word. It is not a ward. It is not a defense. It is a final apocalyptic key. This is the ultimate secret of Titan, a truth known only to the Supreme Grand Master, and upon his ascension, his successor. It is never written down. It is not stored in the librarium. It is passed from mind to mind, a seed of ultimate destruction, a final terrible contingency. It is known only as the Demon's Ruin. It is not like the names in the librarium, the true name of a single entity. It is something far more fundamental, a secret wrested from the very fabric of reality by the Emperor himself in the days before the Imperium, and entrusted to Malkador as the chapter's final sanction. It is the true name of ruin itself. It is the conceptual, metaphysical word that defines the act of demonic existence in the material plane. It is the ultimate anti-demonic equation, the very antithesis of the warp's intrusion. It is the sound of the anathema. To know it is a burden. To speak it is a curse. The war for the Agrippina sector was lost. A vast conjoined fleet of the traitor legions and their demonic masters had torn a new eye of terror in the void, and on the surface of the cardinal world all hope had died. The entire chapter of the Grey Knights had been deployed a desperate final gamble, and they were failing. A Primarch Angron, the Red Angel, had risen, and with him a host of Kornate lords so vast they had turned the planet's oceans to blood. Paladin squads were being torn apart. Land raiders were being melted by unholy fire. The Aegis, the collective shield of the Knights, was cracking under the sheer overwhelming psychic pressure of a world's damnation. Supreme Grand Master Geroniton stood on the shattered spire of the Imperial Palace. He saw his brothers, the purest, most stalwart souls in the galaxy, being butchered. He saw the great portal in the sky, stabilizing a permanent gateway to hell. He saw the end. He had expended every resource. He had ordered every tactical retreat, every surgical strike. All had failed. There was only one option left. Not for victory, but for denial. He knelt, his silver armor stained with the blood of his own brothers. He planted his Nemesis Force sword in the ground. Brothers, his voice cut across the vox, a sudden cold calm in the storm of psychic rage. You have fought as none other in his name. You have held the line. Now, you must hold it for 1 minute more. Ave Imperator. The knights, those that remained, formed a tight silver ring around his position, their wills joined in a final defiant fortress. They did not know what was coming, but they knew the cost. Geronitan closed his eyes. The ritual began. It was not a prayer, it was a disarmament. To speak the 666th word, the speaker must become a perfect hollow conduit for its power. He cannot be a fortress, he must be an open channel. One by one, Geronitan, the most disciplined mind in the Imperium, began to lower his 666 wards of protection. He consciously, deliberately tore down the spiritual firewalls he had spent centuries perfecting. He exposed his mind raw and unprotected to the full, overwhelming horror of the warp storm around him. The Daemons felt it. Angron himself paused, his snarling visage turning towards the spire. They sensed this sudden, brilliant, open soul, a feast of purity laid bare. They lunged a tidal wave of psychic filth to claim the ultimate prize. As their corruption touched his mind, as the whispers of a million demons screamed for his soul, Geronitan opened his mouth. He did not speak a word. He spoke a concept. He unleashed the demon's ruin. There was no sound. There was no explosion of light. There was only silence. A wave not of energy but of absolute, terrifying negation pulsed from the Grand Master. It was not fire. It was not force. It was erasure. It was the sound of a vacuum, the fundamental wrongness of the demonic being corrected by the absolute truth of the Emperor's will. The millions of lesser demons, the bloodletters and plague-bearers, did not scream. They did not banish. They simply vanished like mist in a high noon sun. Their essence was unwritten from reality. Angron, the demon Primarch, roared. It was not a roar of fury. It was a roar of agony. The word was not just attacking his physical form. It was attacking the pact that bound him. The unholy bond between his soul and his god was being scoured. He was not just being banished, he was being deleted. He and his entire host of greater demons were torn, screaming from the material plane, their very essence scarred and diminished, hurled back into the warp in utter, permanent ruin. The sky tore itself shut. The bloody rain turned to water. The battle was over. The surviving Grey Knights looked to the spire. Supreme Grand Master Geronitan was still there. His armor, pristine silver, was still kneeling, his sword still planted in the stone. But he was gone. He was not dead. There was no body to recover. There was no soul to be interred in the great hall of champions. There was no echo in the mind. The Grey Knight librarians looking at the armor felt nothing. A void. A complete and total absence. That was the price. To become the conduit for the 666th word, the speaker must sacrifice his own soul as the fuel. His spirit is not just destroyed. It is consumed, torn apart, and used as the catalyst for the ultimate banishment. He is not a martyr. He does not go to the Emperor's side. He is erased from existence, his very memory in the great ocean of the warp annihilated. It is the final, most terrible curse to save the galaxy by ensuring you have never been. The Imperium wages war on a timescale of grinding generational attrition. The Astra Militarum is the anvil, a bulwark of billions of human lives holding ground through sheer stubborn faith and massed bodies. The Astartes chapters are the hammer waging glorious public crusades of conquest and liberation. Both are instruments of attrition. They fight in trenches. They endure sieges that last for years. They wallow in the mud, the blood, and the despair of the front line. And it is in this environment, the slow, grinding despair of a hopeless war, that the whispers of chaos find their most fertile ground. Desperation is the food of Nurgle. Endless grinding slaughter is the prayer of Khorne. A prolonged, agonizing campaign is the perfect crucible for demonic incursion. The Grey Knights, by necessity, reject this doctrine utterly. Their purity, while forged in fire, is not an infinite resource. It is a precious, irreplaceable asset. To spend months in a trench on a demon-infested world, breathing the psychic miasma, listening to the screams, and enduring the hopelessness would be an insane, suicidal risk. It would be like a surgeon choosing to perform a 100-hour operation in a septic tank. Their very method of war is itself a layer of protection. They do not wage wars of attrition. They do not wage wars of conquest. They are not soldiers. They are exterminators. Their doctrine is one of overwhelming surgical and rapid force. They do not engage the enemy's army. They bypass it. They strike at its head. While the Imperial Guard is massing for a planetary assault, the Grey Knight's strike cruiser sits in the cold, black void, invisible, its aegis fields masking its presence. In its teleportarium, the data gathered by the Ordo Malleus or by their own prognosticating librarians is finalized. They do not target the enemy's fortifications, their supply lines, or their battalions. They target the source, the single demon prince commanding the horde, the coven of sorcerers conducting the ritual, the physical warp portal itself. The war on the hive world of Omicron Prime had raged for 4 years. Billions were dead. 3 Cadian regiments had been bled white. A chapter of Space Marines, the Brazen Claws, was bogged down in a brutal city-by-city fight. The entire world was steeped in corruption, but the Grey Knights arriving in-system ignored the war. Their librarian spent 3 days in deep meditation, scrying the warp, cutting through the psychic storm to find the signal. They found it a single powerful coordinating intelligence hidden in the magma forges beneath Hive Secundus. A demon prince of Tzinch, the architect of Omicron's fall, was directing the war like a grand, malevolent puppet master. A single squad of 10 Grey Knight Terminators stood in the teleport bay. The runes on their armor were lit with the cold blue light of the chamber. The Justicar gave the final command. "We are the Emperor's will. We are the surgical blade. Let no filth endure." There was the agonizing non-reality lurch of teleportation. They did not appear on the planet's surface. They did not appear at the Hive's gates. They materialized directly in the Demon Prince's personal sanctum. The air was a storm of raw, unformed magic. The architect, a being of crystal and blue fire, was floating over a massive living map of the battlefield, moving his demonic legions with a thought. He looked up, his many-faceted eyes widening in a moment of pure, impossible shock. He had been shielded from all scrying. He was in the most secure location on the planet. He was untouchable. He had not accounted for this. The battle was not a battle. It was an assassination. Before the Demon Prince could even raise a shield, the Grey Knights were upon it. They had teleported in a circle, their storm bolters already firing, not at the demon, but at the lesser gibbering attendants, erasing them in a hail of blessed bolts. The Justicar and 2 paladins, their hammer hands engaged, their nemesis halberds blazing with silver fire, crossed the chamber in 3 massive strides. The demon shrieked, unleashing a bolt of pure change. The Justicar's armor nullified it. His halberd struck, not cutting flesh, but severing the mathematical equations that bound the demon to the material plane. The paladins struck in perfect synchronized unison. The entire engagement, from teleportation to the daemon's final unraveling scream of banishment, lasted 37 seconds. The Justicar planted his teleport homer on the floor. The architect is unmade. Objective complete. Titan stands. As the structure of the magma forge, held together only by the demon's will, began to collapse, the blue light enveloped them. They were gone. On the surface, 4,000 kilometers above, the demonic hordes suddenly faltered. Their hive mind was gone. Their strategic cohesion vanished. They became a gibbering, directionless mob. The Brazen Claws, seeing the sudden break, launched a counter-offensive. The tide of the war had turned. The Grey Knights were already back on their strike cruiser, their armor being ritually purified, their minds already focused on the next incursion. They had been in the planet's corrupting atmosphere for less than 1 minute. They had not exposed themselves to the despair of the trenches, the whispers on the wind, the slow creeping rot of a protracted war. They were surgeons. They had excised the tumor, and they had withdrawn before the infection could even touch them. Their speed was their quarantine. The war on the agri-world of Salus Primus was over. The Great Rift, a screaming, bloody wound in the sky, had been sealed by the banishment of the demon prince at its heart. The ground was a charnel house, a soup of demonic ichor, and the steaming red-uniformed bodies of the 88th Vostroyan Firstborn. The psychic hurricane had passed, leaving behind an oppressive, sterile silence, broken only by the whimpers of the survivors. The surviving Vostroyans, perhaps 200 of them, were huddled behind the ruined chassis of a basilisk. They were weeping, shaking, or staring into the middle distance, their minds shattered. They had seen. They had looked upon the impossible, the unreal, the true face of the arch-enemy. And this is the most terrible secret of the Imperium. The truth is a pathogen. This is the purpose of the Edict of Obliteration, the foundational ironclad law of the Ordo Malleus, which the Grey Knights are bound to enforce. It is not a matter of simple secrecy, not in the way a spy guards a code. It is an act of absolute spiritual quarantine. The mortal mind is a tinderbox of emotion, doubt, and fear. The knowledge of the demon, its shape, its name, its very existence, is the spark. A mind that has seen a demon has a scar, a psychic wound. And through that wound, the whispers can find purchase, the corruption can take root. The Imperium is built on a fragile, necessary lie, the lie that there are only Xenos to be purged and heretics to be burned. The Grey Knights are the carriers of the terrible, infectious truth. Brother Captain Arian stood his nemesis blade clean, its silver fire extinguished. He watched the Vostroyans. A grizzled sergeant, his magnificent ice-caked mustache trembling, stumbled towards him, his laser gun dragging in the mud. "My lord!" The man whispered, his eyes wide, the pupils dilated not with awe, but with a sanity-shattering terror. An angel! We saw... What were they? The monsters? You saved us!" Arian looked at the man. He could see the stain on the man's soul, a dark, pulsing after-image of the horror he had witnessed. The man was already compromised, the seed of madness planted. Arian felt nothing. Not pity, not pride. He felt only the cold, hard necessity of the next step. The Vostroyan sergeant, in a gesture of profound, desperate gratitude, reached out his gloved hand. "Thank you. In the Emperor's name, thank you." Arian did not take his hand. He could not. He could not offer a word of comfort. He could not say, "You fought bravely." He could not even acknowledge the man's existence. To engage with him, to form that human bond, would be to validate the man's memory, to give the psychic infection fertile ground. He was a ghost. He was an instrument of purification. He was not a brother in arms. He turned away his silver armor, a blank, impassive mirror, and gave a curt, coded hand signal to the inquisitorial stormtroopers waiting at the perimeter. The sergeant's hand fell his face, a mask of utter confusion, a final human pain, before the flamers were lit. Arian did not look back. This was his loneliness. He was the savior who could never be known, the hero who must remain eternally, coldly separate from the people he was sworn to protect. This coldness was his true fortress. Titan, the moon of Saturn, was merely its physical expression. When Arian and his brothers returned, there would be no victory parade. There would be no feasting hall, no shared remembrances with the mortal armies they had rescued. They would teleport directly into the debriefing chambers, and then to their sterile, silent meditation cells. Titan was not their home. It was their prison. It was a fortress built to lock them and their terrible, contagious knowledge away from the fragile, ignorant, and beautifully human Imperium. They were the ultimate protectors, forever isolated by the very burden of the truth. The last echo of the demon prince's banishment faded. The red-black sky over Salus Primus was tearing itself apart, the unnatural storm receding, allowing the pale, sickly light of the system's star to touch the battlefield for the first time in weeks. The ground was a churned, bloody mud of demonic ichor and mortal remains. But there were survivors. A company of the 88th Vostroyan Firstborn, their red and gold uniforms caked in filth, began to crawl out from their ruined trenches. A squad of battle sisters from the Order of the Valorous Heart, their black armor scorched and dented, were already tending to the wounded. A sister hospitaller was giving the Emperor's peace to a Vostroyan whose lower body was gone, her face a mask of pained duty. Then the relief broke. A Vostroyan Vox operator, his voice cracking, shouted, The sky, it's clear! They did it! The silver! The angels! They did it. A ragged, spontaneous cheer erupted. Men and women who had been staring into the abyss of total damnation just moments before were now weeping with relief. A grizzled Vostroyan colonel stumbled towards Brother Captain Arian, his chainsword held limply, his face split in a grin of disbelief. "My Lord Arian, you've done it. You've saved us. You've saved this world. How can we ever—" Arian stood impassively, his silver armor untouched. He watched the celebration. He watched the sister hospitaller bind a guardsman's wounds. He watched two sisters of battle embrace their bolters clattering against each other's armor. He saw their faith, their relief, their humanity. And he knew with the cold, absolute certainty of his office that every single one of them was lethally compromised. They had seen. They had known. A figure in the black robes of the Ordo Malleus, an Inquisitor Lord who had been with Arian's strike force teleporting in with the command squad, stepped to his side. His face was a network of ancient scars and augmetic lenses. "The primary threat is neutralized, Captain," the Inquisitor said, his voice a dry rasp over the private Vox channel. "But the spiritual contagion remains. Every one of these heroes is a carrier." "They are faithful," Lord Arian stated. It was not a question, not an argument. It was a simple statement of fact. They did not break. It does not matter, the Inquisitor countered, his voice devoid of all sympathy. Their faith makes it worse. They will tell stories of their miraculous salvation. They will describe the monsters they saw. They will try to understand it. And in that understanding, they will open the door. A nightmare. A shadow in the dark. A single whispered word, and this entire sector will be riddled with cults born from the truth of Salus Primus. Mass mind wipe on this scale on minds so deeply scarred, unreliable, it would leave fissures. The Inquisitor looked at the celebrating, weeping soldiers. "The edict is absolute, Captain Arian. The ignorance of the trillion must be protected by the sacrifice of the few. You know the protocol. The choice is not ours. It was made for us 10,000 years ago." Arian nodded a single curt motion. "I know the protocol." He switched his Vox from the private channel to the squad frequency. He looked at his 9 brothers, his battle brethren, who were already forming a loose, disciplined perimeter, their faces hidden, their weapons held at a low, ready position. They were not celebrating. They were waiting. They knew what was coming. The Vostroyan colonel was still talking, still thanking him. "We will build statues to you. The 88th will sing songs of the—" Arian raised his gauntlet. "Sanctify," he commanded. The single word was the only warning. In perfect, terrifying unison, the 10 Grey Knights raised their storm bolters. The Vostroyan colonel stopped, his smile freezing his face, contorting in confusion. "My lord." The sister hospitaller, looking up from the man she was saving, saw the line of silver warriors take aim. Her eyes widened in utter, soul-shattering betrayal. In the Emperor's name, why the storm bolters erupted. It was not a ragged volley. It was a single deafening percussive blast, a machine-like execution. The same psycho-reactive blessed bolts that had scoured the demons moments before now tore through the flesh and faith of the mortal survivors. The Vostroyan colonel vanished in a red mist. The sister hospitaller and her patient were shredded, their innocent blood spraying across the mud. The cheering soldiers were cut down in a single brutal second, their cries of joy turning to screams of confusion and death. Only the battle sisters, their transhuman reflexes and power armor giving them a fraction of a second, had time to react. Traitors, the canoness of the valorous heart, roared, her voice a paradox of pure faith and ultimate agonizing betrayal. She raised her bolt pistol, her faith shield flaring to life, an aura of golden light. It didn't matter. Arian was already moving. He ignited his nemesis force blade, the silver-blue fire burning with cold purpose. He was not a warrior, he was an executioner, he was a function. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, his blade arcing. The nemesis field erased her faith shield as if it were tissue paper, and the blade sheared through her armor, her weapon, and her body. As she fell, her dying eyes, wide with incomprehension, stared up at his blank silver helm. He did not meet her gaze. He simply looked at the carnage, the field now silent, populated only by his 9 brothers and the fresh, righteous dead. They had killed the innocent to protect innocence. They had murdered the faithful to preserve faith. This was the sanctic purity. This was the true, unending, and terrible price of their incorruptibility. But what if the fortress, for all its wards, for all its gene seed, for all its cold, hard training, fails? What if the wall, subjected to 10,000 years of pressure, develops a crack? It is the question the Imperium dares not ask. It is the possibility that the Grey Knights themselves are engineered to find unthinkable. And it is the one failure for which their protocol is most absolute. Brother Valerius sat in his meditation cell, the cold silver light of Titan his only illumination. He had just returned from the purification of Salus Primus. He had been one of the 10, his storm bolter, one of the hammers that had delivered the sanctic purity to the surviving Vostroyans and battle sisters. He was now performing the ritual of scouring, a mandatory deep-level psychic audit of his own mind to cleanse the residue of battle. He replayed the moment of banishment, the severing of the demon prince's essence. He felt the cold, functional satisfaction of a duty performed. But then, there was something else. A flicker. An echo of an emotion he had not felt in centuries. It was not joy. It was pride. A small, hot, insistent kernel of self-worth. I struck the blow that crippled it. I was faster than Arian. My will was the one that broke its shield. It was a thrill. The instant the thought formed the blood in Valerius's veins, the very gene seed of the Emperor ran cold. It was an alien presence. It was a germ. And the germ spoke. It did not whisper from the warp. It spoke from inside his own memory in his own voice. It felt good, to be superior, to wield such power. You are not just a tool. You are a god. You are... Valerius stopped the ritual. He did not fight the voice. He did not try to pray it away. To engage with it even in defiance was to acknowledge it. He recognized it for what it was, a critical system failure. A crack in the wall. He stood. His movements were rigid, precise. He did not pause to retrieve his war gear. He walked unarmored in his simple grey robes from his cell, through the silent echoing halls of the fortress monastery, to the obsidian door of the Chamber of Penance. A chaplain of the Reclusium, his armor black as the void. His skull helm a mask of impassive judgment was waiting. They were always waiting. Chaplain Valerius's voice was a monotone, betraying no fear, no regret. I report a flaw in the vessel. The chaplain's red lenses bored into him. Define. During the ritual of scouring, I experienced the emotion of pride. I found satisfaction in the act of power separate from the function of duty. The flaw has become vocal. It attempts to reason. The chaplain nodded. There was no sadness in his posture. There was no anger. There was only the cold, hard finality of a diagnostician confirming a terminal disease. There was no ritual of redemption. There was no period of prayerful penance. There was no second chance. The Grey Knights were the final absolute line of defense. A single compromised knight with his knowledge of Titan, his access to the librarium, his mastery of the sanctic disciplines. The fall of even one was not a risk that could be calculated. It was a risk that must be annihilated. "The vessel is compromised," the chaplain stated. "It was a verdict. The chapter's purity is absolute." Valerius knelt, his head bowed. This was his final duty. This was the last act of his flawless cold will to offer himself for sanitation. He was not a brother being executed, he was a weapon being decommissioned. "I understand," Valerius said. "My will is strong, but the crack is present. I will not risk the hole." The chaplain raised his Crozius Arcanum, its power field dormant. He did not speak of forgiveness. He did not offer absolution. He unholstered his bolt pistol, a master-crafted weapon of brutal function. Brother Valerius, the chaplain's voice was cold, formal. "For your service and for this final true report, you are granted the Emperor's peace." He pressed the muzzle of the weapon not to Valerius's head, but to his sternum. "Ave Imperator." "Ave Imperator," Valerius replied. A single deafening blam echoed in the stone chamber. The chapter would rather lose a brother, a hero, a veteran of 1,000 wars, than risk 1/1,000,000th of 1% of a chance that the wall might fall. What does a Grey Knight do when he is not at war? The concept of peace does not exist on Titan. There is only the war and the preparation for it. A son of Titan does not rest in the way a mortal soldier does. He does not seek solace or companionship or recreation. He returns to his cell, a bare 6-by-6-meter room of polished, sterile stone. There is a stone plinth for his armor, a rack for his weapon, and a stone slab for meditation. He does not sleep. He meditates. He seats himself on the cold slab, his spine rigid, and he begins once more the ritual of scouring. He closes his eyes and sinks into his own mind, his consciousness becoming a cold, analytical sentinel. He patrols the walls of his soul, the 666 wards, checking every line of psychic code, every spiritual battlement. He searches not for peace, but for flaws. He hunts for the residue of the battle, just fought a flicker of fear when the demon prince struck a pulse of adrenaline, a microsecond of hesitation. He hunts for any stray emotion that may have taken root. He finds an echo of grim satisfaction from the perfect execution of a bolter drill. He isolates it. He analyzes it. Is it pride? No. It is an appreciation of function. It is acceptable. He finds an echo of curiosity about the Tzeentchian rune he saw. He isolates it. This is unacceptable. Curiosity is the gateway to knowledge, and that knowledge is poison. He focuses his will a spike of cold iron, and he erases the memory, scouring it from his own mind, leaving a clean, blank slate. He does not tolerate joy. He does not permit pride. He does not allow fear. He does not indulge in hope. These are not virtues. They are vulnerabilities. They are the handholds of chaos. His mind is not a garden to be cultivated. It is a fortress to be kept sterile. This is the Grey Knight's true existence, a constant, unending internal war against the very concept of self. They are trained from the moment of their implantation to ablate their own personality. They have no names save the ones they are given upon ascension, simple functional honorifics. They have no memories of their life before Titan. Those are scoured upon induction. They have no hobbies, no interests, no desires. The bond between two Grey Knights is not brotherhood, as a space marine of the ultramarines would understand it. It is not born of shared history or mutual respect or affection. It is the cold, functional bond of two perfectly matched cogs in a divine machine. Brother Captain Arian trusts his paladins not because he likes them, but because he knows their precise combat parameters. He knows their reaction times, their preferred combat doctrines, and the flawless, unbreakable nature of their wards. They are reliable tools. They are perfected instruments. To feel friendship for them would be as illogical as a master swordsman feeling friendship for his blade. It is a useless, distracting emotion. They do not fight for glory. There is no glory. Every victory is immediately necessarily erased from the annals of imperial history, their triumphs known only to themselves and the Ordo Malleus. They do not fight for reward. There is no reward. Their only prize for victory is the cold, sterile silence of their meditation cell, and the knowledge that the next inevitable battle awaits. They do not even fight for humanity, not in the way a guardsman fights for his home, his family, or his culture. They fight for the concept of humanity, the abstract idea of a species kept in ignorant purity. They are the guardians of a garden they are forbidden to ever enter. Their existence is a flat, grey, endless line of duty. It is a cold, joyless, and eternal war waged in the shadows against an enemy that cannot truly be beaten, only held at bay. Their only solace is the cold, hard certainty of their purpose. They are the hammer. They are the wall. They are the function. And in that bleak, inhuman, and total renunciation of self, they find their incorruptibility. Finally, there is one unique burden that embodies the entire terrible existence of the Grey Knights. It is not a memory. It is not a duty. It is a thing. It is a weapon kept not in the central armory, but in a sealed, warded reliquary, guarded day and night. It is the Black Blade of Antwer. It is not a nemesis weapon. It is not silver. It is a sword of obsidian-black material that seems to drink the light its edges, weeping a cold, black shadow. It is a demonic blade of unimaginable power, a prison for one of the most powerful and insidious demon princes ever encountered Antwer, the Mouth of Shadows. The blade is not a tool, it is a sentient cage, and its prisoner is eternally, furiously awake. It is never silent. It is a constant psychic scream in the mind of anyone who comes near it. It promises, it threatens, it pleads, it whispers of empires, of the death of gods, of the sweet, cold release of oblivion. It is the most corrupting artifact in the possession of the Ordo Malleus, and it is bound to one man. Castellan Crow, champion of the Purifiers. He is not its wielder. He is its warden. He is its jailer. Crow was chosen for this task not because he is the strongest psyker or the greatest warrior, but because he is the most incorruptible soul in an order of incorruptibles. He is the pinnacle of their art, a mind so pure, so cold, so utterly absolute in its denial, that he can bear this burden without shattering. He carries the blade into battle chained to his gauntlet. He does not draw on its unholy power. He fights it every second, even as he fights the enemies of man. He is a man waging two wars simultaneously. As his own nemesis blade parries the strike of a demon, his mind is parrying a psychic assault from the sword in his other hand. As he recites a ward of protection against a sorcerer's curse, he is simultaneously reinforcing the mental cage that holds Antwer in check. "Let me out, little mouse," the sword whispers its voice, a symphony of a billion dying souls. "I can feel your fatigue. Let me carry the burden. Just for a moment. Let me kill for you. It will feel so good." Crow's response is always the same. Silence. A wall of cold, grey, absolute will. Castellan Crow is the ultimate metaphor for the Grey Knights. He is the personification of their entire existence. He is a single, unbreakable, and joyless soul chained to the very essence of the chaos he is sworn to fight. He is forced to carry this ultimate burden with him every second of every day, a constant private and terrible war waged inside his own consciousness. He is never at rest. He is perpetually tested, perpetually vigilant, and perpetually silently triumphant. He cannot be corrupted, and so he is given the ultimate curse to be the eternal jailer of corruption itself. The question then echoes from the ravaged plaza of Acara Secundus. How do these silver knights walk through hell and emerge untouched? What divine steel, what impossible fortress of the soul renders them immune to the whispers that have broken demigods and laid empires to ruin? The answer is as cold and as functional as the knights themselves. They do not resist chaos. They nullify it. They are not incorruptible because their souls are good in the moral human sense. They are incorruptible because their souls have been systematically, brutally, and completely emptied of everything that makes a soul human. A human soul is a tapestry of light and shadow, pride, fear, ambition, hope, love, and despair. It is this complex, passionate, and flawed texture that the gods of chaos grip, tear, and unravel. The soul of a Grey Knight is not a tapestry. It is a sheet of polished, sterile, silvered steel. There is no purchase. There is no flaw. There is no texture. They are not forged to be paragons of virtue. They are engineered to be voids. They are the anathema in miniature, a walking armored expression of the Emperor's own psychic denial. Their gene seed gifts them with a genetic rejection of the demonic. Their training hammers their minds into a cognitive fortress of 6666 wards. Their war gear amplifies that denial into a physical reality. They do not fight the lie of chaos with the truth of hope. They fight it with the cold, hard, inescapable fact of their own sterile purpose. The heroes of the Imperium, the glorious Sanguinius, the noble Guilliman, the zealous Celestine, are lighthouses. They are magnificent, blazing beacons of hope, passion, and righteous fury, shining out into the darkness of the galaxy. They inspire. They rally. They are a fire. But a fire can be fed, it can be twisted, and it can be extinguished. The Grey Knights are not a lighthouse. They are a fortress. But more than that, they are the void. They are the absolute freezing zero of deep space, an abyss of cold, hard function. Their purity is not the warmth of a star. It is the absence of all heat. Chaos cannot grip a void. A whisper cannot find purchase on a surface of perfect, frictionless denial. A demon, a being of pure, raging emotion, looks upon the soul of a Grey Knight and sees nothing of itself. It sees only a cold, terrifying, and empty mirror reflecting back its own horrifying non-existence. They are the negation of the very equation of chaos. And in this we find the final, most profound tragedy of the Grey Knights, the grimdark answer to the Imperium's greatest threat. Their victory is not in their strength, it is in their sacrifice. But it is not the glorious sacrifice of a hero dying on a battlefield, a sacrifice that will be sung of for millennia. Theirs is the unseen, unceasing, and total sacrifice of their own humanity. The greatest tragedy of the Grey Knight is not that he can die. It is that he must live. He must live forever isolated on Titan, burdened with a knowledge that would shatter a lesser mind. He must live forever denied the simple human comforts of friendship, joy, or even peace. He must live as a jailer to his own mind, fighting a perpetual internal war against the slightest flicker of self, as Castellan Crow fights the blade he carries. He must live to be the executioner of the very innocence he has just saved his soul, stained with a purity that is indistinguishable from atrocity. He is the ultimate weapon, a being perfected for a single terrible purpose, and in that perfection, everything that defined him as a man has been scoured away, leaving only the function. They are the Emperor's final, desperate, and most cruel answer to the great enemy. They are the proof that to defeat a monster one must not become a worse monster but something else entirely. Something cold, something empty, something inhuman. They are the silent silver guardians of a humanity they can never ever be a part of. They are the price of the Imperium's survival, and that price is the soul itself, hollowed out and weaponized, standing eternal cold vigil in the chilling absolute silence of Titan.